Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to present to you Mr. Jalen Stubbs. The man, he is putting in work. He graduated from George Mason University. His goal is to become a sports reporter, but he is doing everything he can to get there, and he will get there as long as he continues to have his foot on the gas and continue to build those relationships. But this young man is doing amazing things so far. Jalen, thank you for joining the podcast. How's it going, man?
Miguel, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate you. Appreciate the introduction. Happy to be here.
For sure, man. So I gotta start. How do you no, wrong. Which sports game or moment that you can remember that had a tremendous impact on you that you wanted to work in sports and make this as a career?
Oh man, you diving right into it. Uh Honestly, I'd have to say I was covering a George Mason basketball game. I want to say it was at the A10, no, it was the George Mason basketball game when we played Fordham. Uh, this was, I want to say, at towards the end of my junior year at George Mason, and I was just like in the moment because one thing about George Mason is we go back and forth with where we stand in the A10 conference, and Fordham is kind of the same way, but it was always just like, oh, who's winning, this, that, and there, and Fordham was a school that we haven't really beat in a while. And just witnessing that victory, that's when I was assured, like, I really love this. I really love what I do. I really love the direction that I'm going in, and I see the vision for my future in this industry, storytelling through sports, because just being there makes a difference. A lot of us can go on t can turn on the TV and just look at the stats, look at the score, and then be done. But if you were actually there, you have more to say about it. And that's when I knew that this I want to make a living from this out of this because ultimately it really stemmed from my passion with sports and storytelling. In high school, I didn't even like math at all, not one bit. Once I got to geometry, I knew I was cooked. But I did, my mom told me about this journalism class my junior year of high school. And she was like, you should check this out. And then I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And then we just started writing stories. And I already had a love for sports. So I put the two together and then here we are. And so it not only stemmed from that George Mason game, but also way back from my junior year of high school, when I took that class. And then it soared from there.
I saw a promotional video on your LinkedIn page earlier today from George Mason University, and it's a nice video, 4 minutes. And what was interesting about that video is that, and it's always interesting, you always learn something new, especially from universities that doesn't get talked much like George Mason.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to learn that the school was ranked number one best value school in Virginia by the Wall Street Journal. That's a high praise. What do you make of that?
Honestly, to me, it means so much just being part of a school with that title. It just goes to show you how much it's grown and how much the organization, the system has grown, their values. That's kind of what drew me to the school initially. I grew up here in Montgomery County, Maryland, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was the most diverse, if someone said this was the most diverse county in the country. George Mason had that same diversity. That's really what drew me to that school. And I knew being at George Mason was a place for me to thrive. And I also mentioned in that video that being in the communications program, I might have mentioned it, I can't remember, but being in the communications program there at George Mason, it's a smaller school. However, I tell a lot of people that it's really what you make out of it. Because when you have a smaller school, not as many resources as you would hope, it's really what you make out of it. I'm sorry, my senior year, I we had a photographer for the fourth when I did the fourth estate, when I was writing for the fourth estate. And I would just have him stay a few minutes after so I could just do a stand up about just highlighting the basketball games or whatever else we were covering. And so that really allowed me to find my voice in front of the camera, which is ultimately what I want to do. But yeah, yeah, just a little sidetrack there. I love being I don't regret choosing George Mason at all. I encourage anyone who wants to go to George Mason to do all their research and talk to me too. George Mason is a great school and it's still growing. It's definitely a newer school. It's just a little over 50 years old compared to other schools. But George Mason is a growing school and I love the direction that it's going in.
Awesome stuff. Everybody, if you're listening to this, if you're an aspiring journalist, he's putting it out there. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to him. And I'll put his information on the description for this interview. But speaking of Fort State, you were almost there for 2 years, almost 2 years. You start off as a staff writer, then you went to copy editor and managing editor.
Mhm.
Given that you were in those three positions, how long did it take you for to go from one position to another?
I can't even remember. When I started as a staff writer, it was like more towards, I want to say like towards the end of my sophomore year. It's kind of like when I was placed in the atmosphere, placed in that space. And then they were just like, okay, yeah, we'll take you as a staff writer. And then the following year, I just eventually started writing more. I can't remember exactly how long it took, but ultimately, I was just called up to copy editor and then managing editor and sports editor. But I want to say the reason why I was able to excel in that program so efficiently was simply because I just kept writing. And when you do things like that, and when you show up and you show out, the people in charge, the people making the decisions, they're going to take note of that. And they're going to always put in a good word for you, no matter what. I wasn't the perfect writer, but I learned along the way. I made sure my goal was to have every article better than the last and more meaningful than the last as well. And so that's what really, I want to say that's what really got me through those promotions, if you will, because just my willingness to learn and just to be there and just to put in the work. Like Kevin Durant says, hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. That hard work and that determination is gonna take you a long way and it's gonna open doors, reveal opportunities that you didn't even know would be presented to yourself.
Would you say that you have strong leadership skills?
Oh, for sure. For sure, definitely. I at George Mason, I was a mentor and I was the director of communications for the Black Male Success Initiative. But a lot of what my purpose really was to mentor younger students who look like me, but not just who look like me, just anybody. Because like I said, George Mason is a diverse school. I'm a mentor there and I'm a mentor with other programs. And I know that a lot of my mentees see me as a leader. And I do all I can to lead by example. Again, I'm not the perfect leader, but I learn from my peers. I learn from what my mentees tell me, and I capitalize on being a leader from that based off of what their message to me. I'm also an Eagle Scout. I mean, back in high school, of course, but that's also taught me a lot about being a leader and just the learning the principles of being a leader.
How do you think technology is impacting the way sports is being covered?
Social media, I think, is a great example. We in this generation, I want to say because I'm Gen Z, uh, like after Gen Z, I want to say like Gen Z and the newer generations, we want to just turn on our phones and look at sports as opposed to turn on the TV. There's a slight shift to like getting information on our phones, and not just with sports, just like with any kind of news. Like we're shifting to the digital world as opposed to like a broadcast world. Broadcast is still very popular, but digital is growing. You see all these influencers who are who are just doing their thing with sports. You see all these Instagrammers and TikTokers who will be at the games, for instance, with the Super Bowl, and then they'll just talk about the Super Bowl on their phone and then post about it, and then they get millions of clicks just to talk about sports. And a lot of attention in this generation nowadays is getting drawn to that. I think that's one way. I guess other ways could be just new methods of storytelling for sports networks. Uh, I don't really know how technology can come into play with that, but I guess when you have new methods of doing some things, for instance, if you're a producer working in the control room, maybe you have new equipment that you're using, just things like that. Lots of hands-on. I think in that instance, there's a lot of hands-on changes, if that makes sense.
Name me your top five athletes from any era that you would like to sit down and you would like to interview them.
From any era.
Any
Do
era, any sport.
Okay. Do you want a specific order?
Doesn't have to be in order.
Okay. Any order, any sport. Oh man.
And any era too, any generation.
Let me see. Jackie Robinson,
Oh, good one.
LeBron James, Leo Messi, even though I only made it to my Spanish isn't like on par. But who
That's
knows?
still a good one. That's still a good one.
Uh yeah, you put me on the spot with this one. Um Muhammad Ali, and then my fifth is probably going to be Tom Brady. Now, that last one, I know I'm back and forth with Tom Brady, but I still have to give respect to him as a human. But yeah, those are my top five. So I said, who did I say? I said LeBron, Jackie Robinson, Tom Brady, Leo Messi, and
I'm not like
Muhammad Ali. Yeah,
those are good ones.
yeah.
Nice. Respect or loyalty.
Honestly, respect because respect I see it as like a tree, and then loyalty falls into that. If you're not loyal to somebody, that's kind of disrespectful to them. And so when you break that branch, you're no longer, I can't say that you're respectful because I feel like respect comes in many forms. I'm not saying like in certain workplaces you have to be best friends with somebody, but you still have to respect them. Like the previous question you just asked me about the five players and what I said about Tom Brady. Uh, he wasn't as a player. I mean, a lot of people hated him, but we still have to learn to respect him as a player because of what he has done and the impact that he's had on the NFL. So I want to say like respect is really important because you'll be in spaces, you'll meet people either for a reason or a season. You'll meet people and another thing is for me, I'm a military brat. And my father, he did 30 years in the army, uh family medicine. He was a physician in the army. Now he's retired and he's doing citizen work. But he taught my brother and I everything about respect. Respect was just priority for us. And everybody we met, elderly, even adults, we use yes sir, yes ma'am. My father, he grew up in the South. He's the youngest of 12. And so that's like respect. He passed that down to us. That's just a no-brainer, no matter who we were around and what they told us or what we heard about any individual. That's first and foremost.
That's a nice story. Thank you for sharing that.
For sure.
Which breakfast meal will you go for after a workout? Oatmeal or protein bar?
Both. I'll come home after my workout and I love to I work out in the morning. Uh
Same here.
yeah, I'm a morning thunder type of guy. Get up,
Yep.
get get my lift in and then keep it stepping. I'll come home, I'll eat my protein bar as like a appetizer and then I might cook some oatmeal. Now, more frequently I will eat a protein bar, but uh every now and then I will eat oatmeal. But honestly, I would eat both if it if I would have time for it. But I would definitely do both if I could. Instant or 1 minute oatmeal, either or. Quaker brand.
Which sporting event, major sporting event, given the opportunity, would you like to cover first? An NBA Finals game or a Stanley Cup game? Stanley Cup final game.
That's tricky that you ask because I work in DC and we're all about capitals. That's one of our biggest teams. But I'm also very familiar with the league. I'm gonna have to give it to the NBA Finals.
Okay,
Definitely.
okay. And speaking of DC, you're the production assistant at NBC for Washington.
Mhm.
So I have two questions to that. Number one, how did you land that job? And number two, how's the culture like so far while you work in there?
I'm glad you asked. I love telling the story. So how I got the job, I want to say my junior or senior year of of college at George Mason. I applied for the digital news internship. I came up a little short. It was like hundreds of people who applied, and I was probably like top five or something like that. I can't remember. I came up short, but I kept in touch with the supervisor, the woman who was running it. And then after graduation, I want to say either that later that spring or earlier in that summer, I reached back out to her and said, "Hey, I just completed my undergrad. I wanted to know, excuse me, I wanted to know if I was still eligible for the digital news internship." And then she said, basically because I graduated, I'm overqualified per se, but she directed me to their production assistant department. And then she got me in touch with my now supervisor. And then she walked me through the steps of applying. I really don't remember even applying on LinkedIn. I think I just sent them my resume and then I had a interview with my now supervisor and then news director. And I think maybe a week or two later I got the call and then I got the offer. Uh One of the biggest thing that they were trying to figure out is just how familiar I am with gathering news because that's kind of what I do there now at NBC Washington is look out for anything breaking. And I'll also go out with reporters and do stand-ups. That's my favorite part of the job. But yeah, that was really the journey about getting that's the short version of it. really just keeping in contact and following up. So I got the job from sending a follow-up email. And one follow-up email makes a big difference. It opened so many opportunities for me, and I'm just grateful to God for all that I've accomplished now and hopefully will accomplish in the future. As far as the culture, I love the culture in that newsroom. Every day I go in there with a smile. I go in there excited. I'm reminded that I'm in a space where people are willing to help me. And they know that I'm a young journalist and they know my passion, they know my aspirations, they know what I want to do, and they're doing all that they can to help me. And I have lots of mentors there who are willing to help, and they've been phenomenal with helping me as well. Uh, but I'm just blessed to be in a space where the people are willing to help. And it's a diverse space too. So you see everybody in there, but ultimately everybody there is willing to help. Even though you may have some people yelling at you in your face, but in the newsroom, everything is boom, 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 boom. Everything is urgent. Everything needs to be done quick. Everything moves fast. When you're in a city like DC, everything moves fast. Very similar to New York. I mean, it's a fast-paced city. There's always something going on, and we just have to keep up with all that's happening in in local DC. So I love the culture there, and I'm just blessed to be around the people that are there and will benefit me I can benefit from in the future, and hopefully I can help them in return one day.
That's great. That's awesome. I mean, I can only imagine because it is Washington, D.C. So, of course, especially if you work in the newsroom, it's definitely a fast-paced environment. I'm from New York, and I know how it is when it's a very fast-paced city. Even though I'm more different than that, I'm more outside of the box. I used to be this very fast-paced person, but now I take my time with things because at the end of the day, health is wealth. Health is number one priority. So
It is.
you can't go too crazy. But speaking of DC, I've been there once, just to travel and, explore the city. And that was back in 2019, almost entering the summer. I went
Okay.
by myself and it was a tremendous experience. I had fun. I am planning on going back this summer, hopefully, but this time with family because I haven't experienced that yet. So that's my goal to go live with my family, explore more of DC. So hopefully we can make that happen this summer. But one final question for you. Where can we follow you and your work?
Yeah, Miguel, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. My LinkedIn is just my name, Jalen Stubbs. My Instagram is the letter JBOY, and then my last name, J Boy Stubbs. And then my Twitter is my name, Jalen Stubbs, with an underscore at the end.
For sure, I'll have all the information below in the description. So again, to everyone, aspiring journalists, is not a if you want to work somewhere, you don't have to start in that same position. You got to be willing to work from the bottom and climb the way up. And that's exactly what Jalen Stubbs, as you can see in this interview, has provided us with that kind of information, share with us his journey so far in his young career. But Jalen, thank you so much for taking the time to do the Respect and Praise show. Much respect and praise everything that you're doing and keep it pushing, man. Keep succeeding.
Miguel, I salute you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's just about the sacrifice, man. I appreciate you. And thank you for your time. Thank you for having me on your show. All the best to you.